service. So that's people in things like landscaping and painting and renovations and mostly home services. So we're very niched into that marketplace. With all those people operating, we get to kind of work with them in in a financial level. We have to work with them on their org structures, their job descriptions, their recruiting processes, their training programs, and build out a very efficient machine. We're kind of like a franchise system for them to follow without them having to buy a franchise. So it's given me a pretty unique view to be able to see what really goes on in businesses in a very in-depth way, and ultimately start to see the mechanics of what really makes things tick and work. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is coming from that, as well as my own past experience, which I'll get to in a second. So let me pull it up here. There we go. Oh yeah, and this as well. So as we go through everything today, there's going to be lots to take in. So just know that we're going to be sending you some resources so you have something to work on out of all of this as well. So we're going to be giving you a goal setting and review dashboard, which will make more sense as I go through it, but it's a place to actually track and monitor goal versus actual in your business. We're going to be going through how to build an organizational structure. So we're going to give you an example chart of how to build those effectively. And we're going to give you a pretty cool, I think it's like a 10 or 12 page employment agreement template that you can use for your own business to build your own employment agreements. So I'll give you a link in the chat window at the very end of the presentation. So just make sure you look out for that. And it'll help a lot of what we talk about today get taken action on, and actually you can use it and put it in your business. So that is that. So a bit more about me. This is my fam jam. My wife's been with me since I think I was 17 years old. Met her in high school, and she's been through a lot of the highs and lows of what it takes to be an entrepreneur along with me. My way, I'd say, to get successful in my entrepreneurial career was just to work extremely hard. And so at 18 years old, I started my first painting business. We scaled it up, and I was working 80 hours a week and living and breathing paint. I didn't have much of a life. I was young, so I got away with it. My wife, girlfriend at the time, pretty well challenged me though in a big way, and just said, like, you have to learn to get better at what you do, or otherwise you're not allowed to be an entrepreneur if you expect to have kids with me and get married. And right around that same time, 2008 hit. Curious in the chat window, how many of you were in business through 2008? Marks has been there, buddy. Thanks, man. How many were you in business in 2008? Give me a quick yay or nay. 2007, 2008, kind of that time frame. Yeah. So we all got shooken up a little, right? The rules of the game changed, and what was somewhat working, with me working 80 hours a week, was slowly grinding me to a halt. And I had to change quite a bit. I had to learn a lot about leadership. I had to learn a lot about management and structure, and how to pull myself out ultimately of the day-to-day and start to leverage myself more effectively. And I did that, and it took a lot of years to figure that out. And I'll walk through some of the things I learned in doing that, but it allowed me to get out of the way and put my people in charge. And what happened out of that is we grew quite significantly. When most people were going through a downturn, I ended up having about 150 staff to manage, and ultimately pulled myself from working 80 hours a week down to about 40, and had a much more just sustainable life. And a lot of what we're going to talk about, not all of what we're going to talk about, but a lot of what we're going to talk about in the next little while here is going to be the foundational piece that allowed that to actually happen. So since then, I've moved on to build a training company where we teach a lot of what I used to do back in the day in that painting business. And that is a lot of what we're going to go over. So let's rock into it. So the purpose of today is I want to help you guys understand just what structure looks like in a company that makes it conducive for a company to grow effectively. Because I think a lot of the time an entrepreneur will build something out of just their own piss and vinegar. They work extremely hard. It works, but it's not functional for growth. It's all reliant on them. So I'm going to show you how to build something that's more conducive to growth. We're going to talk about how to build organizational structure properly, how to connect that to roles and deliverables, and also ultimately create something that doesn't lean on you. The bigger it grows, it actually leans on itself and creates almost like a machine that you're just turning one crank of, if that kind of makes sense. So, and like I said, we're going to give you a lot of knowledge and just the tools you need to be able to build this stuff yourself. So I'm going to give you some downloads at the end where you can kind of start to work on this outside of the webinar. Should be good. A couple quick things to get the most out of today. There's going to be a lot, so just try and pick one or two things that you feel you could implement. A lot of this will take upwards of a year or two to fully put in place. So just for today's sake, it's an hour-long webinar. Just pick one or two things. Share from your experience. So I saw some of you guys in the chat window. That's awesome. The more chatter in there, the better. Helps me feel like I'm not alone, chatting in a room alone. So give me some love. That would help. Use the templates. Like I said, they'll be available at the end. And look for how each concept is linked. There's a pretty well thought through methodical process where every part of your business is actually interacting with one another. Like I said, like a machine where all the cogs are linked and then you're just turning one crank. So just look how we've kind of designed that as we go through. Thanks, Brian. You're here for me. Thank you. Okay, so agenda. We're going to start by defining the fundamental structure of an org structure. So roles, deliverables, and accountabilities. Then we're going to take those definitions and we're going to put them into action by showing how to build an organizational chart. And then we're going to talk about how to take all of that and use that to hold accountability to your people, hold tension to their goals. Okay. So I think we've got another poll question for you guys, which is, I would be curious to know when it comes to goal setting, because this is going to line up everything we're going to talk about, what are your goals for 2021? So there should be a poll. If you want to type in the chat window, you can give us some specifics there, but I think there's a poll that Francisco, if you launch, we can start to see generally. Where generally is your mind focused as you go into 2021? So growing my revenue, hiring more employees, just generally getting organized, or trying to ramp up your productivity. What are some of those things that you're focused on? I'll let you guys fill that out. That'll be my big one. Our big one this year is, I would say, better before bigger. We've grown decently quickly at this organization I'm with now. Like I said, we have 370 companies we work with. So we're building into our organization quite a bit right now, building some technology and some software and just really refining what we know works to make it even better. So we're just basically getting ready for I'd say, things to be produced at scale. So I'll let that keep rolling. And I've got a second question. This one I'd love for you to put in the chat window. But given your goals, given the things that are important for you as an owner of this business, is your team aligned on these goals? And this is, you can put no, like there's no shame in this at all. I would just be curious to hear how much, when you look at the things that are important to you for the next fiscal year, is your team fully aligned in that? No team yet. Oh, there you go. You don't have to worry about it. I have no team yet. I own I have my, okay, cool. So some people with no teams. So the big thing is we're going to talk about how do you, especially when you have a team, align your team with your goals effectively. Okay. So let's get into it. There we go. So first step is to understand what roles you need in your organization. And sometimes people think that's pretty simple. It's like, well, I need someone doing sales and I need someone doing production and someone doing admin. Sometimes you just need someone to take off the load of what you've gotten yourself into and just kind of, it's a hodgepodge of things. But it's important to understand, like, how do you think through roles in a methodical way where people can deliver the highest level of productivity and value to you based on their natural strengths? So I'll give you an example of this because there's lots of different areas where people make mistakes in defining roles in their company. One biggest mistake is they don't define roles at all. They just kind of say, well, we needed someone to kind of take on a little bit of phone calls and a little bit of sales and a little bit of production and a little bit of, and so we just hired someone to do all those random things. That's never going to lead to long-term productivity. People are going to get kind of become unnecessary overhead over time where they're just doing a bunch of random stuff without any clear productivity coming out of them. You'll also see other things where people are, you might have a sales position that you're hiring for, and they have all these things they need to go do, including doing the sales for the customer. So they have to go do the estimate, they have to process everything at the end, they have to go and maybe manage the job even, they got to produce the job, they got to collect the check, and they're also just generally supposed to just be salespeople. Now, one thing I'll tell you, actually, you could tell me, what do salespeople, really good salespeople, and a lot of you may be good salespeople, really suck at? People who are really good with people, who are good at building relationships, what are their natural weaknesses? What would you say? Follow up, yeah. Paperwork, I get that a lot. Financials, details, totally, right? So why would you keep putting in a salesperson's job all these paperwork, detail-oriented things? Why don't you just let them focus on sales? So one thing I did at my organization is my sales team does their job, but they also have a sales administrator that helps back all of them up and takes care of a lot of their emails back and forth, some of their spelling on some of their documents they have, and it helps them just get through things and chew through things a lot faster, right? Or another big one, have you ever noticed, tell me if you've ever had this before, you have an amazing person producing for you, working on the job, doing the day-to-day, actions of production or whatever it would be, and they're so good, you're like, I want to make you a leader of the crews now, or of all of our employees, and they just nosedive, and the whole team is just frustrated. The reason that happens is because just because somebody's good at a technician at what they do doesn't mean their role should be a leader of what they do now. They should just be maybe potentially just doing what they do, right? So it's important to think through what types of roles need to be in the organization for a natural split to happen, and also what types of people fit what kinds of roles best. Because there's scenarios where you might be even tempted to fire somebody because they suck at their job, but it actually might be because you just put them on the wrong seat of the bus. They actually might be really good, just in a different role. And if they're clearly defined, you can give that much more critical thought, right? So some common just roles I see, so there's like business leadership, administrative, sales and marketing, production. But if you look below that, there's like subcategories of things you can create out of these, right? And so this happens more as the business grows, but you've got the owner, the GM, the ops manager, administrative, you've got office manager, bookkeeper, accountant, receptionist. Sales, you might have an estimator, a salesperson, a sales manager, a marketing manager, a canvasser, right? These are all different subsections that can happen. And what usually happens as a business grows is you might have somebody doing, production management, and then suddenly they're, doing all the production and their labor, and they're the skilled person and they're the foreman, and they suddenly have to grow, so they have to put more people under them. And I call that having what's called, it's kind of a funny term, but I call it having job babies, right? So as your company grows, especially you as an owner, you're going to have job babies, things that evolve and transform from being your job along with everything else you do to, hey, that's a 40-hour-a-week job, just that piece alone, right? And so it's important to predetermine what could those job babies kind of look like, right? And pre-organize your business in a way where you know what roles are coming, and you can start to more intentionally build these roles out ahead of time. Now, when you've got some roles established in your business, even if you haven't hired for them yet, you've just established these are the roles that need to exist as we grow. Here's an important piece. People may know what they do now a little bit and be able to be put on the right seat of the bus, but they're not going to be super motivated without what we call deliverables. Now, what are deliverables? These are clear, measurable, like results that an employee can deliver to a company to create an ROI, right? So a lot of us fear hiring people because we're like, well, if I hire this person for 50 grand a year, I only pay myself 80 grand a year, that they're going to be making more than I make. It's like, well, wait a minute. What if they actually produce more ROI, allowing you to grow, making you more money? Well, that's hard to know unless you predetermine the deliverables of that individual. So I'm going to go through some examples of this in a second, but it's very important. Everybody from sales to production to even the office administrator, they have a very clear and tangible way to measure their ability to bring an ROI to the company, right? And without that measurability, without that deliverable defined, again, it's easy for people to become an unnecessary overhead, okay? Now, people get excited by deliverables, especially when I show you them, but these are essentially numbers, like you need to hit this much in revenue or this much in profit, or you have to hit this quality rating this year. They're numbers that a person can make an impact on. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs I work with are maybe not always ADD, but at some level, ADD or dyslexic. They've got lots on their mind, they've got lots of ideas, and they put too many deliverables in place. And so some mistakes to avoid when you're doing this is try not to make it all about like, we're going to give you 7 different things to focus on. Like make it like 2, maybe 4 max, but usually like 2 to 3 is good. Also, when you're doing this, make sure that the people who have to deliver on these numbers are actually able to like impact them directly. It's not an indirect, like I have no real direct control over that. It all depends on John. And if John does his job, then maybe I can do my job. Try and help them have as much direct control over accomplishing it as possible. And ultimately, don't build deliverables that break team unity. Don't build it so that one person, if they do better, it actually hurts the rest of your team. Make it so that they all work together. I'll show you some examples of that in a second. Now, this is cool, but this doesn't mean a ton until you connect it to what's called their accountabilities. So you've got their role, then you've got the numbers for their role that they have to achieve, and then you've got their accountabilities. And what these are is a detailed list of activities that an employee is actually responsible for doing, right? So if they're responsible for customer service, and delivering a 9 out of 10 quality rating, score with a customer, What is it they actually do day to day? Well, maybe they're the person that sets up the job. They do the daily walkarounds. They collect the check at the end. These are the things that they physically go do. And if you don't define these things, people make up their own version of what they go do, right? So I've got kind of a funny story outside of even the world of, deliverables and business. But I had a house that I used to live in. I moved out of, and I rented the top and the bottom out. And I was like, sweet, we're going to cash flow this thing. It's going to be great. And I get someone in the top, I get someone in the bottom. The first three months are okay. Suddenly, 3 months in, I start getting phone calls all the time. And there's constant arguments and bickering going on between the top and the bottom renters. And the final one that caused both of them actually to move out the same month was over garbage cans. The city takes 3 garbage cans, and the person at the top felt obliged. They just invented the fact that they should have 2, and the person at the bottom should have 1 because they're on top. And that pissed the person on the bottom off. And anyways, they both moved out. Now, that could have been completely avoided if in my agreement with them, I had written who gets 2 and who gets 1. And why am I telling you this? Well, it's an analogy, or it's a story when you think about how much that happens in the business, where it's like, that's not my job. Well, that's not my job. Well, why am I doing that? It's like, without that clarity, without clear accountabilities established, everybody starts arguing about who does what, and and sometimes this ends up on your plate, right? When I look at an owner's job, especially me back in the day when I was working 80 hours a week, 40 hours was me running the company. The other 40 was me doing all the things that nobody felt accountable to do. So I just had to go do them, right? So these are the fundamental components when you're building an organizational structure. We're going to now go into how to mesh them all together. But if you think about it, if you have clear roles where you know, hey, these are the natural separations of who should do what. This is the future of what is going to be coming. This is how I pair people to do what they are truly great at, and not a hodgepodge of randomness. Then I start to connect that to like a number. Hey, by doing this, you need to deliver on this. So you create an ROI and help us grow as a company. And by hitting these numbers, here's the things you need to do every single day to hit these numbers. You can kind of start to see where it's all connected or linked. So let's get into it. So how do you build an org chart? Well, I'm going to give you an example for download today that's going to look a little bit like this. And if you notice, actually, quick question on the chat window, how many of you have built something like this before? So like whether it's on paper or in a computer, but you have some sort of like chart where you kind of say who does what. Give me a quick yay or nay. So a couple of lots of yeses. Yeah, sweet. Okay, cool. Here's where I find most of people miss is they build it, but they build it on who does what task first and not on who delivers what ROI first. So if you look closely, it says the person's role, even the person's name. I kind of made up some fun names if you want to take a look at them. But it says below that, their deliverables. If this company is trying to hit 3 million this year and have a 32% gross profit and have 60% of their customers recommend them to others, that's what Net Promoter kind of ends up standing for, then what is it the sales manager needs to do? Well, they need to book 3.2 million with the team. And if you look at it, it's not a typo. Why is it 3.2 million and not 3 million? Well, I'll tell you, because we need a little bit more work at the end of the year for the next fiscal year to go into. So it's not just all booked and produced and we're done. And we also want to give a little bit of wiggle room if the person misses on their goals, because the company's financial plan is to hit 3 million. We do not want to hit low on that. So if they hit 3 million after they go out and work really hard, then at least they're not, basically missing on their company's ability to hit the goal. If you look below that, this person's trying to keep their sales team's sales ratio at 55%, maintain a gross profit margin of 35%, and so on. So it's a slightly modified version of what this person in the sales management role, can be in charge of given the company's overall goals, right? Production over here. They need to produce 3.1 million. So they don't need to have more produced than they need for the year, but we give them a little bit of buffer just in case they miss, right? They're not in charge of Net Promoter, but they're in charge of customer service. So at the end of the job, we want to have 95% of our customers hit the satisfaction rating, saying yes, they'd recommend us to others. And then they have to hire and train all new staff. Here's an interesting one, the middle one, office staff. A lot of people will say like, well, they can't really have a deliverable. It's hard to do, right? Well, look at this. They can keep AR below X%. I put 5% in there as an example. Return phone calls within 2 hours to help the sales team book their quotes quickly. Requested estimates get scheduled within 24 hours. So they can indeed have deliverables that directly relate to an ROI that they have direct control over, right? And below that is their team. So production is actually a good example of this, but you can see in the team section, these two people leading the crews equal this person's goal, right? So now everyone has subordinates who have the same goal as them, everyone has a leader that has the same goal as their subordinates, and everyone's working together to kind of drive this one big kind of goal for the whole company. This kind of makes sense. Now, if you look at this, it's hard to always do it 100%, but it's best practice to try and have people's deliverables that revolve around quality, volume, and profit. So I call it like the trifecta, right? So if it's all about quality though, and it's not about anything else but just hitting the quality metric, then usually volume and profit are going to slip as a result. If it's all about volume, if it's all about just revenue, drive, what slips? I'm sure we've all experienced this. Profit tanks. Often quality does too. And if it's all about profit, it's all about making as much as you possibly can tomorrow, then often quality will slip in a big way. But if it's about all three, it kind of holds people accountable to making more like critical, like, what do you call it? Just be more well-rounded in their way to problem solve things. They're looking at the different angles of how should I deal with this customer complaint? How should I manage the rain on this job? They're thinking more than just like one idea. They're trying to think a little bit more like an owner would, essentially, right? So some people put in bonus question mark. I'll give you an example of bonuses that can come off of this. So if I've got a production manager, a project manager, I might say, hey, Mr. Project Manager, you need to produce, for example, let's just use round numbers, $1 million at a 30% gross profit margin. So you need to produce $1 million of revenue and have 30% of it be profitable, or 30% profit come off of after costs of producing that job. What am I essentially saying? I'm saying to them, you need to bring the company $300,000 because 30% of $1 million is $300,000. So I'm like, well, for that, I'm going to give you a $70,000 a year salary. And anything more than that you want to make comes off of your bonus package. And here's how you're going to make your bonuses. I want to make sure that if you produce 300 grand or anything over it, you get a percentage of it. So 300 grand is what we're paying your salary for. But if you make us $350,000, I'll give you 10% of that, let's say. So now that person can make 5 grand more if they want. But the neat thing is it's potentially unlimited, right? Because if they produce more volume, but doing more revenue, if they do it more profitably, they do that $1 million at a 40% margin versus 30%. There's many ways for that person to make more money, but they get to think dynamically about how they want to manage their production, their team, and their crews. And if I add in there a little bit of like a bonus incentive on hitting certain quality metrics, whatever, $1,000 for hitting 95%, $2,000 for hitting 100%, whatever it be. Now I'm tying in quality, volume, and profit. So, make sense? Let's give you some food for thought. But ultimately, the big idea here is taking the owner out of being in charge of everybody and everything and handling everything in their arms and starting to relinquish some of that control down to certain sectors of the organization where their leadership can be completely in control of one side of the business and think a little bit more independently about how they achieve that, right? And at the same time, we've got everybody aligned. So my goal would be to hold my sales manager, my office manager, and my production manager accountable to hitting their goals. Like all my life is all about when I run a business is helping my people hit their goals and make money off bonuses. That's all I care about. The more money they make, the more money I'm going to make. I'm happy to give them as much as I possibly can and invest all my time, effort, and ideas into helping them versus just doing it all myself. So the question is, what if we're a sole proprietorship? The best thing you can do for now is, if you're not managing anybody right now, is to look at, say, in a year from now, would I be hiring 1 or 2 people? And if you are, I'll give you a quick way to look at doing this. Actually, for anybody doing this to get some stuff off their plate, make a list of everything that you do in a week and then circle the stuff that's highest time consumption and lowest skill. And there's going to be an opportunity within that type of stuff to bring somebody into the company that can deliver a pretty good ROI. Not even because what they do is so amazing, it's because they're freeing you up and doubling your time up, right? The first employee I ever hired for Breakthrough Academy was a girl named Caitlin Kaufman. She's actually still with us to this day. And she was my like administrative assistant. I am like administratively not good. I am administratively challenged. And she doubled my effectiveness only because she took so much off my plate of what I wasn't great at, so I could go double up on what I was great at, if that kind of makes sense. Okay, cool. All right, let's keep rolling here. So this is all cool and this is all exciting to look at, and everyone's always very interested when I show that chart, but it's meaningless and ultimately useless if you don't hold tension to the goals established in that org chart, right? So you could show this to your team and everyone would be like, wow, like this is really well thought through. Like this, we actually all are going to be aligned this year. And then it's like, hey, go back to business as normal and we'll see you next year. We'll see at the end of the year if you hit your goals. You need to take time to hold proper accountability to your people. Okay. So first step in doing this is to build out proper employment agreements that establish or inject into them the deliverables and accountabilities that you basically thought through in each role. So I'm going to actually show you a physical version of this. Let's see if I can grab it and pull it over. Can everyone see this? Just give me a quick yeah or nay if you can see it's over the slide deck. I hope you can. If you can't, yeah, you can. Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to give you guys this for download. It's a 12-page employment agreement. But at the top here, it's got this person's deliverables, right? So it's right front and center. Here's what you need to produce. Here's the margin you need to bring in. Here's the quality score you need to hit. There's a couple other in here as well. Now, each deliverable is directly tied to a set of accountabilities. So for deliverable 1, aka delivering projects on budget, on schedule, or 1.5 million at a 44% margin, here's the things you need to do day to day to be able to achieve that, right? For deliverable number 2, aka bringing in the quality rating from a customer at 9 out of 10 on average, here's your customer service responsibilities, right? So now everything somebody does is directly held accountable to a number, a measurable metric that can be measured, basically, that can be looked at, right? So if somebody's like, what do you mean the customers are upset? Like, I do a great job. I took care of Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Johnson and Mrs. It's like, yep, but your rating is at like a 7 out of 10 on average right now. So there is clear indication that yes, most of your customers are happy, but there's a few that aren't. And let's start to look at those specific people and start to identify the issue. Now you can narrow in with somebody and have somebody ultimately understand where they're doing well, where they're not, and what's required of them and where they may not be hitting their requirements. There's objectivity to it, if you will, right? So it is interesting, right? This going back to my renter scenario, when you have somebody go through this with you before you start with them and you sign this off with them, how much gets resolved later on, right? Because if you don't set the rules up, they will, right? So some other sections in here, reporting, this is who you report to, this is when you report in, this is what you report on, right? Your bonus structure, so your base salary plus your bonuses, all tied back again to the deliverable. Do you track your employees day to day? Then micromanagement. So we're going to get into some of these systems, but we use, between a combination of a good project management software, a good financial tracking software, and sometimes a good hour tracking software. We let the technology do it and the reporting comes in at the end of the week. Anyways, this is a kind of an employment agreement example, something we're going to give you for download, has all the other stuff that comes with a standard employment agreement as well. So again, this is good. This gets people kind of accountable to the right stuff. But again, it's arguably useless 3 to 6 months later if you don't have some ongoing kind of coaching where you're investing into your people. And so that's what we call GS&R. It stands for goal setting and review. It's something I learned years and years ago at the first painting business I ever worked with. It was a franchise system called, if you ever heard of it, called College Pro Painters. And they use this acronym. And what's neat about it is it basically was a established time every single week where I would be investing into my people, okay? So I would have goals with them that they signed off in their employment agreement, and I would be measuring those goals with them week in, week out to see if they're ahead, if they're behind, by how much, and what to do to help them. Now, this can come in many different forms. If you have a management team, they can have, we're going to give you an example of this today, but they can have a file that looks something like this, where they literally have a dashboard of all their goals here. They can start to see if they're ahead or behind by how much, what their weekly goals were, their annual. They can actually, like, this is for a production manager, but they can actually have broken down like set of what their goals are per week, how many hours they should be producing, what their actuals are. They can do job costing in here. But we use this with all of our members per role, and we help them with their management team dial in exactly how to help that person achieve that goal year end. Now, if this is pretty advanced and you're like, look, I just have a bunch of people that just work day to day in the field, like I would never have them fill an Excel sheet out like that, fair enough. What I used to do for my painters, I would just have a little sheet, and it had Monday to Friday on it, and then I had AM and PM. And we used to write in the plan of what we wanted to get done in the morning and what we wanted to get done in the afternoon, and we would just check off whether or not they got done that plan. So if any job we're about to go produce gets put on the books, they have just a job plan, and their goal is to get it done on schedule, right? So they're just checking off before they have lunch that they got all those things done. But again, we're holding them accountable to a deliverable, and we're giving them a simple way to report on it. And so depending on the role, there's different ways to do this. Now, if all of that is done correctly, you can start to see the business coming off of your plate. I'll say the biggest thing that happened for me when I did this is I stopped feeling like I was a glorified babysitter of everybody. And I actually started to feel a little bit more like I was a coach, like I was coaching a team. And that team was becoming more and more skilled over time. And I started to notice, like, I can build an athletic, like performance-driven team versus just ordering people around and having constant turnover and constantly reinvesting into new people. This was actually like a stable way to drive the organization forward, where I had pulled myself out of the way, right? If I wanted to go book more work, I couldn't just go do more quotes. I had to bring on more good salespeople. I had to train them effectively. I had to work on the closing ratio of the ones I currently had. I had to work with my canvasser to help them do better. My goal was about helping my people hit their goals. But until those things are established, it's just you constantly barking orders at people, trying to get them to do things that have no alignment with what they actually care about in their lives. And this was the game changer that helped me so much in just understanding how to get myself out of the day-to-day and start to put my people in place to help them drive the organization forward. Okay. So where do we start with this? Because this is not a overnight, 1 hour webinar where it's all gets done and everyone's happy. There is some time to implement this, right? There's some thought that has to go into this over time. So some things we're going to give you, like I said earlier, is we're going to give you some templates. We're going to give you some things that you can work on right away in your business, a way to kind of build your own org chart structure, that 12-page employment agreement I was showing you, even a profit or goal tracking Excel file that you can kind of play around with and start to see if that would work for your organization. So some stuff to work on, essentially. We also, as a company, this is what we do, right? So we've built everything you ever need for your organization. This is specific to contracting. So everyone who's in landscaping, painting, renovations, most home services, sub-trades, things of that sort. If you're in that marketplace, we've already built all your job descriptions. We built all your standard operating procedures. We built all your profit tracking documents. We built all your, even for recruitment, all your ads, all your everything. It's almost like a franchise in a box. We've built it for you, which is pretty cool. We have a bunch of people to support you in this too. So we have a pretty epic group of coaches. I'll show you in a second, but essentially they're there to help with actual implementation of all of this. And then the community itself is really neat. Just all of our members, we collaborate, we help each other. What is really cool is through that group of companies, we have over $1 billion of revenue that we all do together, and we help each other, and we have buying power, and anyways, all kinds of cool stuff that comes out of just having a group of like-minded people around. So just a bit of a screenshot into our little knowledge library, but we've got a massive document vault with how-to videos that go along with them. These are some of our coaches. Here's what I find interesting about our coaches. Most people that work with us, they're entrepreneurs. They are harebrained, idea-driven, fast-paced, people that kick up dust and get things started, but really struggle with the systems and the processes and the engineering of the business in the back end. They have all the ideas, they just can't stitch it together properly. These coaches are all more the engineer type brain. They're actually the exact opposite to me. They're much more skilled than me when it comes to a lot of the stuff I just talked about. And they're very good at putting in place the infrastructure required. And then the community, we've got an online community. We do epic trips, which we can't really do right now because of COVID. It sucks, but we went and built some houses in Mexico. We've gone to all kinds of different mountains, done crazy ice climbing and snowmobiling and snowboarding trips. And we just get our entrepreneurs together in some pretty unique ways. So it's a bit about us and a bit about what we do. What we look for, so there's a lot of you on the call today, and probably a lot of you are going to be listening to this later on. Our specific target demographic, it's very important actually, because we don't work with everybody. We look for people who are highly entrepreneurial, so they're a business owner before they're just a technician, if that kind of makes sense. They're in residential or service contracting, so they're in some sort of contracting industry. It helps with the niche because everything we build can be specific to that industry now, and helps all of our members to connect because they all have a lot in common. They've been in business for a few years. So a lot of the companies we work with have been established for at least a few years working in their company. They've got revenue between 750K and 15 million. So it's just, again, there's a lot of what we're talking about today. If it's your first year and you're at $100,000 a year and you don't have any staff, this can be kind of like building the Rolls Royce of business models before you even need it. Like you might just need a Honda Civic tomorrow, right? So we just want to make sure we have the right fit for the right kind of clients we work with. They've got a team, so 4 to 25 employees, because a lot of what we talk about is driving performance in people. They've obviously got a strong desire to grow, and they're seeking growth and leadership development. I'm not here to drag somebody across the line. I want someone who's motivated, just needs direction, and we can support them in that way. So that is that. There's a lot I just went through. Let's take a minute or two and reflect, and then I'll get you your downloads, and then we'll go through some Q&A. What was your biggest takeaway from today? Shoot me in the chat window. What was, out of everything we talked about, what was one thing you're like, we could do that? That makes sense. In the next 6 months, next 2 weeks, whatever it is, I could work on that one thing. What is that one thing for you? What's the biggest takeaway you got from today? So applications, deliverables, and positions, clear roles, delegation, identifying the roles, cool. Focused on deliverables, org chart with targets, totally. Yeah, how to set up my team. Look, all this is coming through. Okay, it's going faster than I can read. Org tools, good. Accountabilities. Okay, cool. Build better, not bigger. Totally. Yeah, that's been a big theme for us this year, because you can scale and scale and scale all you want. At a certain point, you start to realize like we're making the same, if not less money. I'm more stressed out than I've ever been, and my people aren't happy and my customers aren't happy. It's like, what's the point, right? If you're building a business, you want to build it to be producing and providing for you and your family, for giving your employees an amazing place to grow and experience a job and even a career in some cases, giving your customer the best product and service out there in the marketplace so you can just keep developing and dominating. But if you're just growing for the sake of trying to make quick cash, get in and get out, that's not, I firmly believe anyways, that's not what business is here for. Like, we live in a free market society because I truly believe anyways, the best of the best end up dominating and winning. And if you're not the best of the best, you probably aren't going to stay in business forever. And so if you need to slow down and scale back a little bit just to become the best in your industry, do it, because long-term, that's what's going to make the most sense, right? Going back to 2008, one of the biggest lessons I learned was, at the end of the day, markets are going to change. We've been in an amazing market for the last while. We all saw March and April of last year happen, and we were like, okay, this is it. Like, recession's coming, and then it didn't. And now we're all kind of nervous because it's kind of like, when's it going to come, right? But what's interesting is markets do and will change. And it's up to us as entrepreneurs to adapt to that change and not just try and ride it when it's high and then crash and burn out when it's low, but to learn to adapt through those changes ultimately becomes, for me anyways, is the best skill I've ever learned, right? I've been in business since I was 18 years old. I've never had a small claims court against me. I've never had a bankruptcy. I've never had debt, even beyond like my own, like just mortgages and stuff that I pay off every month. I've managed myself financially, morally, even, as of late, my own time with my family, so I can enjoy the journey and not just, get rich quick and hope it all works out. Like that's a bit of a pipe dream, if I'm honest, right? It's taking time to build things so they have resilience for the long term. That's a lot of what we stand for here, and it's a lot of, obviously, hopefully what you saw in today's presentation, you can do in your own organization. So it's good. Okay, let's get you your downloads. So I'm going to put in the chat window a link, and just let me know if you guys see it. It'll get you your org chart instructions, so how to build your organizational chart and properly. It'll give you this 12-page employment agreement that we have and a GSR dashboard that you can utilize. So it'll take you a landing page. It looks like this. Fill it out, gives us some information on you. If you're interested to chat with Breakthrough Academy, so if what I just spoke about, you're like, this son of a gun is literally talking to my soul. if I'm speaking to you specifically, we should probably have a chat. So it doesn't mean you have to work with us or not. I think it would be good for us to sit down and see if what we do would help you guys. There's a lot we do, and we save a lot of people a lot of grief long term. So you'll see a little thing below that says, send me the templates and let's talk about how you can help me in my business. Just check that off, and that'll be a cue for us to be able to have a conversation with you. If you just want the templates, if you're like, hey, Danny, it's not a good fit for us for XYZ reason, totally cool. If we're not in the same industry with you, or the revenue is not a good match, or if you're just generally not interested, that's all good too. It's all good. So just check the box below that says just send me the templates. If you do want to chat though, once you do click that off, you can even select a time. I think it takes you to another page. You can select a time to chat with us right away. So that is that. Other than that, the link's in the chat box. If you didn't see it already, I just put it in again. Feel free to click on it and you guys can rock and roll. We've got a little bit of extra time, Francisco. I don't know if you want to come on with me or not, but we've basically got some space and time for questions, I guess.
Yes, thank you very much. If we were in a normal setting, there would be a standing ovation right now for you. This was really, really great and super valuable. I love how engaged everyone was in the chat. So that was amazing. We do have a little time for Q&A. We have 3 questions right now standing. If you have more questions, let's throw them into the Q&A section. If anyone feels brave enough to come in and ask it live, just raise your hand and we'll unmute you so you can ask your question directly. But Marquis Shaban asks, what is the first step to creating a sales process for a new service-based business?
I mean, my first step is always documenting the psychology of a buying customer with the process that I find organically works. So I'll give you some examples of this, but I'll give you the psychology of a buying customer. People want to first know, like, and trust you. They want to build rapport. They want to be like, do I like this person? Or do they like, kind of make me angry when I talk to them, right? Like, how does this person make you feel? Then they want to know, like, does this person understand my needs? Like, do they actually get what I'm looking for? And then they're like, okay, they get it. Does their product and service meet my needs? Does what they're selling actually give me what I need? And once they've established those things, they very quickly want to get to price and then time to buy, when to buy. So that exact order actually is how most of us make buying decisions. And so you'll see this when somebody calls you and says, what's your price per square foot? What do you charge for this? They've jumped right to price. They've jumped over all these other things they need to find out about you first to make a good decision. And if you give them that right away, they usually hang up and they'll be like, I'll call you back, right? And they're gone. Or they make a buying decision too quickly with you and have buyer's remorse. So what I always do is I think through my sales process and how do I take them back to a place where I can build rapport and get to know them. Then I take them to a place where I start to explore their needs and understand what they're looking for. Then I take them to a place where I start to describe my product and service. Then I finally take them to a place where they can see my pricing and go over when and how they would buy. And so depending on the business, that could be one phone call because it's a junk removal service and it's all done in 15 minutes. It could be a quote where I have to do a pre-screening call and go build some rapport for 10 minutes and find out some of their basic needs. Then I go to a quote for 2 hours and I go over their needs and handle objections and show them, the process of what we're going to do for them. And then I show them the price at the end with the quote. So different sales processes can be spaced out at different lengths and in different ways. But I start with sales psychology. I start with, like, what is this customer going to need to know? And how can I deliver that to them in a timely way where they can make an informed decision along with me where I maintain control?
Amazing. I see 6 hands raised up, so I'm going to see if this is actually Gen 4G Roofing. I'm going to allow you to talk if you want to ask a question. Let's see, testing.
I should just unmute.
Let's see, unmute her. Yep. Nope. Okay. We'll move along. In the chat, the Q&A, Maureen ask, would you say you first need to set up infrastructure, procedures, roles, etc., before removing yourself from the trenches, or do you do that along the way?
It's a bit of both, right? Like I would say, so what we do with a lot of our members is we have them build an org structure for what a year from now is going to look like. So in 1 year, what does that org structure look like? Well, we need a salesperson probably, and we need probably a person in the office, and the rest is kind of is what it is. So what I'll have them do is I'll have them draw up a full org structure for that year, and I'll just have them put their name into all those roles until we can hire someone to replace them for that specific role. But at least now you're hiring and recruiting for a specific role. Like when I look at BTA, we sit down in December, we decide what our budget is for next year, what our cost structure is going to look like, what our overhead is going to cost us, what our hiring and recruiting plan is going to look like. And we decide when we're going to be hiring certain people based on what the growth trajectory of the company looks like. Once we've decided that, we have a recruiting plan to lead us for when those people should be hired. It's actually a big part of recruiting is not just being good at recruiting, but having the right leg time and lead time to get that right person. So, right, if we're going to hire a coach, we might have an 8-month recruiting plan to find that one person versus we need a coach tomorrow. We have too many members. What are we going to do? We decide all that in December so that by September of that next year, we have that person fully in their role. So we build the org structure for the future, and then we go start executing to build that into reality. Right? My business partner said this to me a long time ago. He's super right. He's like, if you ever noticed in business, you build things twice. First, it's in your mind, then it's in reality. But if you try and build it in reality right away without fully conceptualizing things effectively, it becomes kind of garbage, kind of hodgepodgey. Actually, he does this for me. He's very much more an engineer brain. I'm like an entrepreneur brain. Actually, I see this from all my scribbles. But he had me write this down a long time ago. He says, is this going to be great long term? And if it's not, then we shouldn't be building it. And if you haven't thought through that, then don't talk to me about it. All right. What else we got?
All right. There's a couple folks who are having issues with the templates thing. I believe they're South Africa having an issue with the phone number. Erin Shield from BTA is also here, so I'll let her tackle that one to make sure that we can get in touch with them. But Tavisa Woni asks, besides the goal setting template, what else can one make? What else can one make team goal oriented? How to motivate them?
Yeah, I mean, my team, it's funny, we talked a lot about individual goal setting with individuals to drive individual performance. My team always has a team goal, and that can sometimes just be a fun thing to go do, and something on a quarterly basis, right? So actually, you know what, I'm gonna speak about goal setting in a bit of a different context for you so you can see this, but goals are good and bonuses are good to a point. They can also take away from creativity and like the ability to focus on like the bigger picture. Sometimes people get so dialed in. So I'll try and sometimes do something where, you know, it's like if all of us do this together as a team, you know, we'll pay for everyone to go on a, you know, we did a quadding trip. So we like paid for everyone to go on a really cool trip quadding for like the day. And so it was like, if all of us go after this together, and although you might not specifically know exactly how this is going to help you and as an individual, you know you're helping the team, there should be some sort of team goal established that people can do together. And that helps a lot with team unity too. You know, I know Dave, he's one of our cold callers. He'll call a lot of our people prior to a webinar. He doesn't have any goal around that. He has no like ROI for him because he's just literally calling people to make sure they have the, you know, the link and that they're ready to go. And but he does it because he knows as a team he's helping us out overall, and there's a bigger team goal, and as well as just I think it's good for him. He just feels like he's helping. He's a part of something bigger. So.
Ian Davis asks, as a young contractor with little revenue, would it be more beneficial to hire subcontractors to fill roles or to bring them on as employees?
This is a really long question. I've seen both. I personally built an employee model. So I basically would go and book 2 to 3 months worth of work for an X amount of people. So actually, I'll tell you exactly what I did. January to May, I would book work like crazy, and I would produce nothing until May 1st. So I would basically tell the customer our start date is May 1st, and then I'd start booking through May into June. So what I was doing was January, February, and part of March, I was seeing how much work I could book and get slotted into the calendar. And then right around like middle of March, I started recruiting for people. And I started based on the bookings I had, I could kind of tell how many people I was going to require. And then it would take a little bit of a leap of faith because I'd hire these people with about a month to 2 months worth of work already preloaded. And then I'd have to rely on my ability to keep that train moving forward as the summer got going. So it's, for any entrepreneur, you have to take some level of a leap of faith when you hire employees in doing that, but it allowed me to have a lot of control, allowed me and my people to work directly, very closely together and keep the quality of my product really good. And that's how I kind of organized it. I'll also say this, I collected 10 to 15% deposits, and I used that towards, purchasing of my equipment, bringing on my team for the first while, doing training with them. It allowed me to use, customer deposits actually to grow the company without me spending my own money, which was unique. Now, the subcontractor model, depending on the industry you're in, I see this in roofing a lot. People subcontract quite a bit. It is a much faster, more scalable way to get things going without taking on a ton of overhead and risk. I don't think it's a bad model. I don't know it as well. Some of our coaches do quite a bit, and they swear by it. It's a bit of a mixed bag. I see arguments on both sides of it. Generally, having employees allows you to have better quality work, have more control over how you get things done in the company, and allow you to build a bit of a culture. Generally, having subs gives you less risk, better, easier way to scale up the business, and a bit of a simpler business model. So, yeah.
We have another question from Maureen, and I think it's a really interesting one. How do you set up salary ranges for your employees based on the skills, or do you take into consideration multiple variables, communication, dedication, etc., to adjust them regularly? And do you make them transparent, the ranges?
Cool. I like that. The best way to do this, and this isn't actually, I'll say personally, this isn't actually what we've followed in our personal organization quite yet. So I do think we need to get to this. The best way to do this is to have pre-established ranges for roles, right? So you have a base salary, year 2, you have a different range of base salary, year 3, and so on. And it's already predetermined, assuming you hit the goal. So if you don't hit the goal, you don't move to the next range. But if you do hit the goal, then you can move up to the next range. So it's not even just years of service, it's years you hit the goal. And every time you've hit the goal, you move up to the next range. And having that predetermined keeps it pretty objective. Where you can pay people a little more for them being a little more skilled, or, whatever, just different things that are a bit more outside of just years of service, that's where I think the bonus package can come in. Because what I've done with a lot of my team is I just look at, like, I know you can create a big ROI in this one area, and I want to give you a really cool, unique bonus on that this year, because I think it's an extra project you could take on, and I think it's an ROI you can bring to the company. And here's something for everyone who's listening who is an employee right now. If you want to get a raise, do not go to your boss and say, I would like a raise, and let me tell you all the reasons why at home I need a raise, blah, 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 blah. Go to your boss and say, I'm curious, what would it take to be able to make X amount of dollars a year? What would I need to do to be worth that to the company, or bring an ROI to you to be able to make that for myself? That's a much more worthwhile conversation to have, and actually is an engaging one for an entrepreneur to listen to be like, yeah, you want to help bring a bigger ROI? I want you to bring a bigger ROI. Let's talk. Versus I need more. It's, hey, how do I bring more value?
Amazing. All right, the last question, worth every minute. What's in the next session? Yes, so like I said before, this is the first of probably 17 to 20 webinars we're going to do through 2021. The next one is on March 24th, so 3 weeks from today. We're going to deep dive into the world of marketing and SEO. So stay tuned for more information on that. You'll receive an email, but we have a really, really amazing webinar coming up. But before we wrap up, Danny, I want to say thank you to you. Thank you for all your time, for all the insights. I think this was really, really great. It was insightful, and I see a lot of engagement. People really, really appreciated it. So for those of you who are not able to download the resources, I'll get in touch with Danny. We'll make sure that in the follow-up email, the form is corrected so that anyone can download those templates. And like I said, you'll get all of these resources tomorrow in a follow-up email. But with that, I'm gonna pass it on to Braden from FreshBooks. Now, Braden's going to talk a little bit about the financial aspect of your business and how you can use some of this great information to really give a perspective and a healthy view of your business finances. So, Danny, thanks again. Braden, take it away.
Amazing. Thanks so much. Hopefully everyone can see and hear me now. But yeah, thanks again, Francisco and Danny. It was a great session. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. I think when we look at FreshBooks, and I've only got 10 minutes for us to kind of go through it, there's a lot of information here, but ideally, I want to touch on some of the more relevant functionalities that can be used to help apply some of the great strategies that Danny had discussed. So really the kind of three core areas I'd be looking at really covering today is really on how do we stay organized and keeping everything in one central location, because obviously as a business owner, when things are scattered in 1,000 different locations, from paperwork to invoices to bills to time tracking to whatever it is, it can obviously lead to inefficiencies in your process. And then the second aspect is this concept of goal setting that Danny really hammered home, and how you're going to be able to easily use FreshBooks to kind of keep in check where you are in relation to those goals. And then the third aspect is, giving your employees the tools they need to be successful. So there's some great tools for collaboration and teamwork within FreshBooks that we're going to cover at a high level. So I'm just going to share my screen, and hopefully you are all able to see that here. I think we're good. So we're going to run through the dashboard here. This is kind of like your 10,000 foot overview of the business. We'll jump into the client profiles and see how you can organize everything from a client by client level. We'll jump into some of the invoicing, proposals, and wrap it up with some project management and project profitability. So right at the top of the dashboard here, outstanding revenue on the left-hand side is going to break down all of your overdue invoices on a per client level. On the right is everything outstanding in terms of invoices on a per client level. Continuing down, monthly recurring revenue refers to the automated recurring invoicing associated with FreshBooks here. So if you have clients that you're billing on a monthly basis or retainer based, you'll be able to kind of have a set it and forget it approach within FreshBooks. And this is just representative of the revenue that's being generated by that. Total profit, again, is a really great understanding of visually, if you're in the green, you're making money. If you're in the red, you're losing money. And of course, if you hover over any of these dots, it's going to break down not only the month you're selecting, but of course, the year to date numbers as well in terms of income, expenses, and total profit from there. Revenue streams is just where the money's coming from. So obviously, hopefully there's a paper trail for some of the services that you're providing. But of course, if there's in-person sales, if there's online sales, if there's stuff that's not captured by an invoice for whatever reason, you can of course record that in the system to ensure that you're capturing everything that's coming into the business. On the flip side, when we're talking about spending and expense management, we obviously have great expense management tools built into the system, because it's not just about what you're bringing in, it's also about where you're spending, how can you maximize the efficiency of every dollar that you're spending. So this is going to give you a great overview of, based on every single category we have here, where the money's going, and it's going to give you some great insights overall, not only how much you're spending, but specifically what aspects of the business are costing the most amount of money. Is there ways we can cut back? Is there ways we can spend more to drive more growth? Things like that. And then last but not least, for any folks that are tracking time and want to be able to bill their customers for that time, we have great time tracking tools built out in the system that we'll cover when we talk about projects and project profitability. And this is just a graph to highlight, based on the clients you have in the system today, the hours that are unbilled, and the dollar figure associated with those hours. So how much money you have on the table right now that you're not collecting on because you haven't billed out to the customer. So again, this is just a great reminder for yourself. Hey, am I on top of billing my customers? Am I on top of bringing in revenue for the business? Jumping into clients here, we're going to jump into one of the client profiles here, but just a quick overview. This is your most recently active customers and just a list of all of your clients down below. If you click into any one of these client profiles here, you're going to get a great overview of your relationship with this customer. So obviously we have an outstanding revenue graph that works exactly the same as it does on the dashboard. It just simply lets you know on this specific client, what's overdue, what's outstanding, everything that's in draft for invoices, any available credits on this client account, any unbilled time on this specific customer, any unbilled expenses. And of course, on the left-hand side, we've got our contact information and additional contacts down below. When we look at invoicing, this is kind of part of our client hub. So anything to do with your customer that sits within FreshBooks can be found underneath their client profile. So it's a great way of staying organized and making sure that you have all the information in one central location. Okay. From there, we can take a look at one of the invoices that we have sitting in draft here, and you'll see just a great overview of what this invoice looks like. If we go to edit this, you'll notice a few different settings that we have. So obviously we can select our customer, our date of issue, our due date. We can have your logo here, and we can set it up in a color scheme that makes sense to make sure that it's on point with your brand, and you're conveying that to your client. You have your invoice number field, your job number, PO or reference number, and then of course a list of your line items with your rates, taxes, and of course any descriptions to go along with it to provide some context to the services you're going to be providing your customer. You obviously can offer discounts, you can request deposits, you can apply credits that are on the client profile to pay down this invoice. And then one of my personal favorites is the payment schedule. This allows you to parse out, some larger projects into, more bite-sized chunks for your clients to pay you down. And what it really does is for those larger projects, it puts together a payment plan. So on these specific days, these are now the amounts that are due. And then last but not least, we have our notes and terms section for any kind of net 30, 60, 90 terms to go along with it. And then any supporting documentation that you feel is, relevant for your customer. The goal with FreshBooks, and you'll kind of see this as we continue through, is to make it as efficient and easy as possible for you to manage your day-to-day, reference back to those goals that you're setting and make sure that you're, dedicating and delegating certain aspects of the process to your team members and giving them the tools necessary to do it. When you're ready to send out this invoice, simply click the big green Send To button. Obviously, we have our email address and just a preview of what this email is going to look like to the customer. And then, of course, if we drop down, we can actually send it off to those additional contacts we have in the system and send that invoice from here. And what's nice about this is after we've actually sent it, we're going to get this activity history here of everything that's going on with this particular invoice. Jumping back to the client profile here for a moment, and continuing with the client hub, we obviously have a list of all of our recurring templates, so automatically sent invoices, any retainers, any credits, any expenses that are tied to this client profile, and then obviously some statuses of whether it's been billed back to the client or not. And then, as I mentioned, I wanted to touch on proposals and project management quickly. So one of the biggest things here is when we're looking at a list of all these proposals and estimates, if it doesn't have a little unique identifier saying that it's a proposal, it's an estimate. We're going to walk through what proposals look like today. And the main reason being is they're a little bit more robust. They allow you to customize it a little bit more. And you'll see what I mean here when we go to edit this really quick. You can outline things like a scope of work, a timeline. This is just a quick example we've thrown together for you here, but obviously you can see there's quite a few ways you can set this up to look and feel the way that you want it to and add a level of professionalism to it. Holding your clients accountable to the services you're providing. You can include photos, things like that. You can obviously outline your pricing. And then down at the bottom, one of my personal favorites is the ability to actually add in an e-signature built directly within FreshBooks. So you don't have to use a third party to collect a signature anymore. It's directly built into the system. So your client has the ability to review that proposal. And when they're ready to do so, sign it and have it sent back as an accepted proposal from there. And then, of course, on the very bottom, you have the ability to attach any supporting documentation that you didn't want to include in the proposal itself. Same rules apply when you're ready to send it. You can just simply send that off to your customer and be on your way. Last piece that we wanted to jump in and cover, obviously, is our project management. So diving back into the client section here under projects. This is just a list of all the projects we have ongoing with the customer, a list of the team members that are added to those specific projects, how many hours you've allocated, where you are in relation to those hours that you've allocated, and of course, the end date associated with the project or the projected end date, just to show you a high level of what it looks like. When we click into any given project, we're going to get a great overview of not only the hours that have been logged, who's tracking them, but of course, the different services that we're providing, any hours that are remaining in our budget, any unbilled time, unbilled expenses, how many days were left to be, completing this project. And then down below, you'll see here, we have obviously a list of, again, all the time entries, any invoices that are tied to this particular project, any expenses, and of course some per project level reporting. Now, this is really, really important and really crucial because obviously as a business owner, better understanding on a project by project basis how profitable you are is really, really crucial to better understand what our margins are. Are we charging too little? Are we charging too much? How can we leverage more of these services to drive future growth for the business? And again, this can be tied directly back into the deliverables and the accountabilities that Danny was talking about in terms of margins and maintaining a certain percentage. So when we pop over to the profitability tab, we're actually going to have a overview of your profit margin on this particular project, how much has been billed, your costs, and obviously your total profit from there. So this is just, again, a great overview of everything to do with this particular project, taking into note your people's time. So obviously who's tracking time and how much they're costing you on the hour. And of course, how much you're charging the end client and the revenue and profit associated with that. Last thing I just want to quickly show you is the time tracking here. So there's two ways to track time within FreshBooks. One is through a timer or stopwatch. And obviously this is incredibly accurate. It goes up second by second. You can add in your specific service and notes to go along with the specific service that you're providing. Or of course, you can just manually enter in the time here and log it from there. So hopefully this gave you a really good overview and understanding of kind of high level what FreshBooks can be used for. There's obviously a lot of information here for anybody that wants a more personalized and customized demo of the product to kind of fit and work through what your business is and the type of workflows you're going to need. Feel free, Francisco, I believe, is going to be sending out a Google form for you all to fill out. And one of our team members will happily chat with you about the business and how FreshBooks might be able to fit in what you're looking for. So with that, I'll kick it over to Lindsay from Signpost, who's going to be talking about reviews, the importance of them, and kind of how to get more of them, sort of thing.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Braden. Again, my name is Lindsay. I'm here with Signpost today. And Signpost is a CRM software specializing in driving 5-star reviews. And we have a really good integration with FreshBooks that allows us to pull in that customer once they make a payment and then follow up for a review accordingly. Quick agenda for the day. I'm going to cover why reviews are important, how to get more of them, and then how to get the most out of that FreshBooks integration. Now, let's hit Google first. I'm sure everyone's aware of what Google is. It is a make or break for businesses these days with having that Google My Business listing. We know 80% of consumers are going to use a search engine like Google to find local info. So here's a little example here on the right. Let's pretend here. Let's say you're in Omaha. You're trying to find a home remodeler. Most likely, you're just going to grab that phone. You're going to type in home remodeler near me. Google's going to pop up with the top recommendations here under the map. Now, I know that when I look at this, my eyes go right to these stars here. Stormberg Construction, 4.9 average, 37 reviews. Then you got Omaha Construction down here, no reviews at all. Now, since the information here is limited, most people's mindset is to click on this one first to find out more and just do their homework. Now, I've worked at Signpost over 6 years now. I've always had contractors tell me that they get most of their referrals from word of mouth. That's all fine and dandy, but people are still going to be Googling that business regardless. Let's say I have a buddy that refers a contractor to me. I need to get the guy's phone number, so I'm going to jump on Google. I'm going to do that quick search, and then I'm going to see that listing on the right-hand side where it showcases those reviews. Now, if I pop on there and I see that my buddy's contractor has a 3-star average, I'm probably going to wonder why my buddy's wasting my time. Probably going to be looking for more of a Stormberg Construction type business that has more reviews, has more stuff for me to do my homework on. Now, I'm not alone with that mindset. I know 82% of consumers do read online reviews before they even reach out to the business. So back to my example with my buddy, let's say instead of searching for home remodeler near me, instead I search for best home remodeler. When I use that word best, that's going to have Google pop up with everyone in that area over a 4.0 average. So my buddy's contractor is not even going to be in the mix because he was at a 3-star average. That's why it's really essential to establish that trusted reputation on Google. just so you're at least in the conversation when people are doing that search. Now, you want to make sure that you have a good plan in place. We see that 10 reviews will be read by the consumer before they really trust the business to reach out. Now, if you have just a handful of reviews, maybe a few buddies helping you out, giving you some 5 stars, that's really not going to cut it these days. You want to get a consistent flow and a consistent stream of those reviews, because the relevancy and the recency really plays into that Google algorithm. Now, here on the right, you'll see a few others. We got Facebook, Yelp, Nextdoor. Those are kind of all the big ones in the review game right now. And it's really good to have a finger on the pulse of what's popular in your area. Let's say maybe you're in a smaller town where Yelp's not so big. Maybe don't focus your energy on Yelp. We can focus on the other ones. Let's say maybe you have a Facebook page that's seeing a lot of activity. That would be a good one to focus on because we know you have traction there. Now, no matter what, I'm always going to recommend that you have Google as your #1 priority. Biggest website out there. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. And we want to make sure that if someone's doing that quick Google search, that they have a good first impression. Now, crazy stat here. We've seen 70% of consumers will leave a review for a business when asked. Now, the big problem for a lot of business owners is that they're simply not asking. Now, I know you can cross your fingers and just hope your customers may just naturally give you a good review. But again, you want to have a process in place to make it easy for the customer and have that follow-up involved. And that's really where Signpost comes into play. Now, this will give you an idea of how we would go about getting that review. So again, if you integrate with FreshBooks, we could pull in the customer as soon as that payment's made. We then follow up later that day with a review request, an easy button to get right to that Google link of yours. Streamline them right to where they can start typing in that good review, and then boom, you just got a review. Again, it's really key just to have that ask as part of your process. So if you currently don't have that in place, I'm going to highly suggest you guys take a look at this. And back to the FreshBooks integration, the automation and the integrations that we have is really what makes this powerful. And again, with FreshBooks, that lets us follow up in a timely manner to get that review driven. Now, I know everything I'm talking about so far is review based, but you can also use our campaigns to set up repeat business offers. Maybe you're trying to find some upsell or cross-sell opportunities. Maybe you're trying to get more referrals. Let's say you're a painter. Maybe you offer power washing on the side. You could use Signpost to pop in a quick campaign. Hey, did you know we offer power washing? 10% off. Send it out to your database, get some traction from there. And really the big idea with this is to have these different campaigns in place so we can really hit people with the right message at the right time. Now, we got a little link here. I know it's going to be in that follow-up email tomorrow, but really want you guys to take advantage of this. We have a little offer for you guys for joining today. If you get a demo with our team before March 12th, you will receive a $25 Amazon gift card from us. So definitely worth your while to take a look at that. You know, I know that everyone could use some more reviews. So again, I got my contact info there at the bottom. Keep an eye out for that email tomorrow. And it's a pleasure joining you guys today. Thanks, everybody.